The Battle of Kyiv, which took place from February 25 to April 2, 2022, was a critical engagement during the early stages of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This battle not only determined the fate of Ukraine's capital but also marked a significant turning point in the broader conflict. The Russian military aimed to capture Kyiv swiftly, anticipating that a rapid takeover would lead to the collapse of the Ukrainian government. However, the fierce resistance mounted by Ukrainian forces and civilians thwarted these plans, leading to a significant setback for Russia. Background: prelude to the invasion. In the months leading up to February 2022, tensions between Russia and Ukraine escalated dramatically. Russia had amassed troops along its border with Ukraine, raising alarms internationally about a potential invasion. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion, initiating what would become one of the most significant conflicts in Europe since World War II. The primary objective was clear: capture Kyiv and install a pro-Russian government. Initial Russian strategy: the Russian military employed a strategy reminiscent of blitzkrieg tactics, aiming for rapid advances on multiple fronts. The assault on Kyiv was primarily conducted from the north via Belarus, and from the east through regions like Sumy and Kharkiv. Russian forces quickly captured key locations such as Hostomel Airport, which was intended to serve as a staging ground for further operations into Kyiv. 138. Key phases of the battle: Phase 1, initial advances, February 25 to March 1. In the initial days of the battle, Russian troops made significant gains. They captured several suburbs around Kyiv and advanced towards the city center. However, Ukrainian forces were well prepared and mounted a robust defense. The Ukrainian military utilized effective guerrilla tactics and leveraged their knowledge of the terrain to disrupt Russian supply lines and communication. 23. Phase 2. Stiff resistance, March 2 to March 15. As Russian forces attempted to encircle Kyiv, they faced increasing resistance. Ukrainian soldiers, bolstered by civilian volunteers, engaged in fierce firefights. Notably, on March 3, Ukrainian forces successfully repelled an assault on Bucha, a suburb just northwest of Kyiv. 29. The urban landscape of Kyiv became a formidable barrier for advancing Russian units. The defenders employed anti-tank weapons supplied by Western allies, which proved crucial in halting armored advances. Phase 3, counteroffensive, March 16 to April 2. By mid-March, Ukrainian forces began organizing counteroffensives. On March 22, they launched coordinated attacks aimed at pushing back Russian troops from key positions around Kyiv. 15. The turning point came when Ukrainian forces retook Bucha and Irpin after intense fighting. Reports emerged of atrocities committed by Russian troops against civilians in these areas, further galvanizing international support for Ukraine. 49. On March 29, as Ukrainian forces continued their counterattacks and inflicted heavy losses on Russian troops, Russia announced its withdrawal from Kyiv and surrounding areas. By April 2, Ukrainian officials declared that Kyiv was fully secured. 8. Casualties and impact: the battle resulted in significant casualties on both sides. While exact figures remain unclear due to the chaos of war, estimates suggest that thousands of soldiers were killed or wounded. Civilian casualties were also substantial. Reports indicate that around 89 civilians were killed during this period. 13. The humanitarian impact was profound, with approximately 2 million residents evacuated from Kyiv and surrounding regions. The failure to capture Kyiv marked a severe setback for Russia's military strategy and raised questions about its operational effectiveness. It demonstrated that despite being outnumbered and facing one of the world's largest militaries, Ukrainian forces could effectively defend their capital through determination and strategic ingenuity. International response: the Battle of Kyiv garnered widespread international attention and support for Ukraine. Countries around the world condemned Russia's aggression and began supplying military aid to Ukraine. This included advanced weaponry such as anti-tank missiles and air defense systems, which played a crucial role in bolstering Ukrainian defenses. 37. Additionally, economic sanctions were imposed on Russia by numerous nations in response to its actions. Lessons learned: the Battle of Kyiv offers several critical lessons regarding modern warfare. Urban warfare dynamics. The battle highlighted the complexities of urban warfare, where local knowledge and civilian involvement can significantly impact military outcomes. Logistical challenges. Russia's logistical failures were evident throughout the battle. Supply chain issues severely hampered their ability to sustain operations. Morale and resistance. The determination of both military personnel and civilians can alter the course of conflict significantly. The psychological impact of defending one's homeland cannot be underestimated. The Battle of Kyiv stands as a testament to the resilience of Ukraine in the face of overwhelming odds. It not only preserved Ukraine's sovereignty but also reshaped global perceptions regarding military engagements in urban environments. As the conflict continues to evolve, the lessons learned from this pivotal battle will undoubtedly influence future military strategies worldwide. In summary, while Russia aimed for a swift victory in capturing Kyiv, they encountered fierce resistance that ultimately led to their withdrawal and underscored Ukraine's resolve to defend its territory against aggression. The Battle of Kyiv, which unfolded from February 25 to April 2, 2022, was a pivotal moment in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This battle not only shaped the immediate military landscape but also had profound implications for the course of the war and the geopolitical dynamics in Eastern Europe. Key turning points during this battle significantly influenced its outcome, showcasing the resilience and strategic ingenuity of Ukrainian forces against a larger and seemingly more powerful adversary. Key turning points in the Battle of Kyiv. 1. Initial Russian advances and Ukrainian preparedness. The invasion began on February 24, 2022, with Russian forces launching a multi-pronged attack aimed at capturing Kyiv swiftly. The initial strategy involved overwhelming force and rapid movement along major highways, with the expectation that this would lead to a quick victory. However, prior to the invasion, Ukrainian forces had already repositioned their troops strategically, anticipating an attack. This foresight allowed them to engage in effective ambush tactics against advancing Russian units, significantly slowing their progress. The defense of Hostomel Airport. One of the first major confrontations occurred at Hostomel Airport, located just northwest of Kyiv. Russian airborne troops captured the airport early in the invasion, aiming to use it as a staging ground for further assaults on Kyiv. However, the Ukrainian military quickly launched counterattacks to reclaim this critical location. The fierce fighting at Hostomel demonstrated Ukraine's determination and ability to mount effective defenses against elite Russian paratroopers. The failure of Russian forces to secure and hold this airport was a significant setback that hampered their operational capabilities. Psychological operations and morale. Ukrainian forces employed psychological warfare tactics that played a crucial role in undermining Russian morale. For instance, they spray-painted messages such as "Welcome to Hell" on overpasses and signs along anticipated Russian routes. This tactic aimed to instill fear and uncertainty among Russian troops while bolstering Ukrainian resolve. The psychological impact of such operations cannot be underestimated. They contributed to a growing sense of defiance among Ukrainian defenders. Effective use of anti-tank weapons. The introduction and effective deployment of anti-tank weaponry were game changers in the defense of Kyiv. Ukrainian forces utilized various systems, including javelins and NLAWs, next-generation light anti-tank weapons, which proved highly effective against advancing armored columns. Notably, during an ambush in Irpin, Ukrainian soldiers successfully destroyed key vehicles in a Russian airborne battalion column using NLAWs, leading to significant enemy casualties and equipment losses. 5. The role of civilian resistance. Civilians played an instrumental role in the defense of Kyiv. Many took up arms or assisted military efforts by providing intelligence, logistics support, or even engaging directly in combat. This grassroots mobilization highlighted the unity and determination of the Ukrainian people to defend their homeland. The involvement of civilians not only bolstered military efforts but also served as a powerful symbol of national resistance against foreign aggression. 6. Counter-offensive operations. By late March 2022, Ukrainian forces began organizing counter-offensives aimed at reclaiming territory lost to Russian forces. On March 22, they launched coordinated attacks that successfully pushed back Russian troops from key positions around Kyiv. Reports indicated that Ukrainian forces had retaken towns as far as 35 kilometers from the city center by March 25, signaling a significant shift in momentum. This counter-offensive was crucial in regaining control over areas surrounding Kyiv and demonstrated Ukraine's ability to adapt and respond effectively under pressure. 7. Russian logistics failures. Throughout the battle, logistical challenges plagued Russian forces. Poor supply chains and inadequate planning hindered their ability to sustain operations effectively. As Ukrainian forces engaged in guerrilla tactics and targeted supply lines, Russian units found themselves increasingly isolated and unable to maintain momentum. This logistical breakdown contributed significantly to Russia's eventual withdrawal from Kyiv. 8. The decision to withdraw on March 29. Following sustained Ukrainian counterattacks and increasing losses, Russia announced its withdrawal from Kyiv and surrounding areas. This decision marked a decisive turning point in the battle. It not only signaled a failure of Russia's initial objectives but also emboldened Ukrainian forces and strengthened international support for Ukraine's cause. Conclusion. The Battle of Kyiv stands as a testament to the resilience and determination of both Ukrainian military personnel and civilians in the face of overwhelming odds. Key turning points throughout this engagement, ranging from strategic preparedness and effective use of weaponry to civilian involvement, played critical roles in shaping its outcome. As we reflect on these events, it becomes evident that the defense of Kyiv was not merely a military victory, it was a profound statement about national identity, unity, and resistance against aggression. This battle will likely be studied for generations as a case study in modern warfare, highlighting how strategic ingenuity can prevail against larger conventional forces when combined with unwavering resolve and community spirit. The lessons learned from Kyiv will undoubtedly influence military strategies worldwide as nations confront similar challenges in an increasingly complex global landscape. The Battle of Kyiv, which took place from February 25 to April 2, 2022, was a defining moment in the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia. While the focus often rests on military strategies and operations, the role of Ukrainian civilians during this battle was crucial and transformative. Their contributions not only bolstered the defense of Kyiv, but also exemplified the spirit of resistance that characterized the Ukrainian response to the invasion. This speech will explore how Ukrainian civilians contributed to the resistance during the Battle of Kyiv. highlighting key actions, initiatives, and the broader implications of their involvement. The context of civilian resistance. The invasion begins on February 24, 2022. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, targeting major cities, including Kyiv. The initial assault aimed for a rapid takeover, relying on overwhelming military force. However, this strategy underestimated the resolve and capabilities of both the Ukrainian military and its civilian population. As Russian troops advanced towards Kyiv, civilians quickly mobilized to support their country's defense. The role of civilian mobilization in response to the invasion. Ordinary Ukrainians flooded into the ranks of the Territorial Defense Forces, TDF. These volunteer units were established to augment regular military forces and provide localized defense against Russian incursions. Civilians brought diverse skills and resources to these units, enhancing their effectiveness in combat scenarios. Key contributions of civilians. 1. Formation of volunteer defense units. One of the most significant contributions of civilians was their participation in volunteer defense units. Many individuals who had no prior military experience stepped forward to defend their neighborhoods and cities. These units engaged in various activities, patrolling neighborhoods. Civilians organized patrols to monitor for Russian infiltration and provide early warnings. Establishing checkpoints. Volunteers set up checkpoints to control access to key areas and prevent enemy infiltration. Training. Experienced veterans conducted training sessions for new recruits, teaching them basic combat skills and tactics. 2. Civilian resistance movements beyond direct military engagement. Civilians organized resistance movements that employed both violent and non-violent tactics. These movements included sabotage operations. Some civilians engaged in sabotage against Russian supply lines and military assets. This included disrupting logistics routes and targeting equipment. Intelligence gathering. Civilians provided critical intelligence on Russian troop movements and positions, enabling Ukrainian forces to plan effective counterattacks. Non-violent protests. In many areas occupied by Russian forces, civilians staged protests against the invasion, demonstrating solidarity and defiance. 3. Humanitarian support. Civilians also played a vital role in providing humanitarian support during the battle, sheltering displaced individuals. Many families opened their homes to those fleeing conflict zones, providing shelter and safety. Organizing aid efforts. Grassroots organizations emerged to collect supplies such as food, medicine, and clothing for those affected by the war. Mental health support. Civilians provided emotional support to those traumatized by the conflict, helping maintain community morale. 4. Utilization of technology. Ukrainian civilians leveraged technology in innovative ways to support resistance efforts. Drones for reconnaissance. Civilians adapted drones for surveillance purposes, gathering intelligence on enemy positions and movements. Social media campaigns. Social media platforms became powerful tools for organizing resistance efforts, disseminating information about Russian actions, and rallying international support. 5. Psychological warfare. Civilians engaged in psychological warfare against Russian forces through various means. Public messaging. Messages such as, "Welcome to Hell," were displayed prominently along anticipated Russian routes, aimed at demoralizing enemy troops. Civic engagement. By actively participating in defense efforts, civilians demonstrated unity and resilience that inspired both military personnel and fellow citizens. The impact of civilian contributions strengthening national identity. The active involvement of civilians in defense efforts significantly strengthened national identity among Ukrainians. As ordinary people took up arms or engaged in resistance activities, a sense of unity emerged across different social strata. This collective effort fostered a spirit of resilience that became emblematic of Ukraine's struggle against aggression. Influencing military strategy, the contributions of civilians also influenced military strategy during the battle. Adaptation of tactics. Ukrainian military leaders recognized the importance of civilian involvement and adapted their strategies accordingly. This included integrating civilian intelligence into operational planning. Decentralized resistance. The decentralized nature of civilian resistance allowed for more flexible responses to Russian advances. Localized actions could be coordinated without waiting for central command directives. International solidarity. The bravery displayed by Ukrainian civilians garnered international attention and support. Global awareness. Media coverage highlighted civilian resistance efforts, drawing attention to Ukraine's plight on the world stage. Increased aid. The visible commitment of civilians prompted increased humanitarian aid from international organizations and governments. Challenges faced by civilians. Despite their significant contributions, Ukrainian civilians faced numerous challenges during the Battle of Kyiv. Threats from occupying forces. Civilians operating behind enemy lines faced severe risks from Russian forces. Retaliation. Acts of sabotage or resistance often led to brutal reprisals against local populations suspected of aiding Ukrainian forces. Surveillance and repression. Occupying forces employed surveillance tactics to identify resistance members, leading to arrests and violence against suspected collaborators. Limited resources. Many civilian initiatives were hampered by a lack of resources. Supply shortages. As fighting intensified, access to food, medical supplies, and equipment became increasingly difficult. Coordination challenges. The spontaneous nature of civilian resistance sometimes led to disorganization or duplication of efforts. The Battle of Kyiv was not solely a military confrontation. It was also a profound expression of national resilience powered by ordinary citizens determined to protect their homeland. Ukrainian civilians made invaluable contributions through volunteer defense units, humanitarian support efforts, technological innovations, psychological warfare tactics, and grassroots mobilization. Their actions not only bolstered military defenses but also forged a stronger national identity that resonates deeply within Ukraine today. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in history, it is essential to recognize that civilian involvement can significantly influence the outcomes of conflicts, demonstrating that courage can manifest not only on battlefields but also in communities united against oppression. The legacy of civilian contributions during the Battle of Kyiv serves as an enduring reminder that ordinary people can enact extraordinary change when faced with adversity. Their bravery continues to inspire future generations as they navigate complex challenges in an ever-evolving global landscape. The Battle of Kyiv, which unfolded from February 25 to April 2, 2022, was a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. While the Russian military initially aimed for a swift victory, their campaign quickly devolved into a series of strategic blunders that ultimately led to their failure to capture the Ukrainian capital. This speech will explore the main strategic mistakes made by Russian forces during the Battle of Kyiv, examining how these errors contributed to their inability to achieve their objectives and the broader implications for the war. Strategic mistakes made by Russian forces. 1. Underestimating Ukrainian resistance. One of the most significant strategic miscalculations made by Russian forces was their underestimation of Ukrainian resistance. The Kremlin anticipated that Ukrainian troops would quickly capitulate and that civilians would welcome Russian soldiers as liberators. This belief was rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of Ukrainian national identity and resolve. Instead of surrendering, Ukrainians rallied around their government and military, demonstrating fierce resistance. Misjudgment of morale. Russian planners failed to recognize the high morale among Ukrainian forces and civilians. President Volodymyr Zelensky's decision to remain in Kyiv and inspire his people played a crucial role in galvanizing resistance. Unexpected military adaptability. The Ukrainian military proved to be more adaptable and resourceful than anticipated, employing guerrilla tactics and leveraging Western-supplied weaponry effectively against Russian advances. 2. Poor logistical planning. Logistics is a critical component of any military operation, and Russia's logistical failures were evident throughout the Battle of Kyiv. The initial invasion plan lacked comprehensive logistical support, which severely hampered operational effectiveness. Inadequate supply chains. Russian forces entered Ukraine with insufficient preparation for a prolonged conflict. Troops faced shortages of food, ammunition, and fuel due to poorly established supply lines. Disorganized command structure. The lack of a coherent command structure exacerbated logistical issues. Units operated independently without proper coordination, leading to competition for limited resources among different Russian battalions. 3. Over-reliance on air power. Russia's strategy relied heavily on air superiority to facilitate ground operations. However, this reliance proved misguided as Ukrainian air defenses effectively countered many Russian airstrikes. Failure to achieve air superiority. The Russian Air Force struggled to establish dominance in the skies over Kyiv. Ukrainian forces utilized advanced air defense systems provided by Western allies, which significantly limited the effectiveness of Russian air attacks. Neglecting ground operations. By focusing too much on aerial bombardments, Russian commanders neglected ground operations that could have secured key positions around Kyiv more effectively. 4. Inflexible military doctrine. The rigidity of Russian military doctrine hindered adaptability during the battle. Traditional tactics that worked in previous conflicts were ill-suited for the urban warfare environment encountered in Kyiv. Failure to adapt tactics. Russian forces continued to employ conventional tactics without adjusting to the realities of urban combat. This inflexibility allowed Ukrainian defenders to exploit weaknesses in Russian formations. Ineffective use of special forces. While Russia deployed elite units such as Spetsnaz for special operations, these forces were often misused or unsupported, leading to ineffective engagements against well-prepared Ukrainian defenders. 5. Intelligence failures. Accurate intelligence is vital for successful military operations. Yet Russian intelligence assessments were flawed leading up to and during the Battle of Kyiv. Outdated maps and information. Reports indicated that Russian forces operated based on outdated maps and incorrect intelligence about Ukrainian troop placements and capabilities. Misinterpretation of civilian sentiment. Intelligence failures extended to misreading public sentiment in Ukraine. The assumption that Ukrainians would welcome Russian troops as liberators was fundamentally wrong and led to strategic miscalculations. 6. Overextended supply lines. As Russian forces advanced towards Kyiv, they encountered significant logistical challenges due to overextended supply lines. Vulnerable convoys. Long supply convoys became prime targets for Ukrainian artillery and drone strikes. The use of advanced systems like HIMARS allowed Ukraine to disrupt Russian logistics effectively. Difficulty reinforcing front lines. As supply lines stretched thin, it became increasingly difficult for Russian commanders to reinforce frontline units or respond quickly to changing battlefield conditions. 7. Failure to secure key infrastructure. The initial assault on Kyiv included attempts to capture critical infrastructure such as airports and bridges. However, these efforts were poorly executed. Failed airborne operations. Initial airborne assaults at key locations like Antonov Airport were met with fierce resistance from Ukrainian forces, resulting in significant casualties among Russian paratroopers. Inability to hold territory. Even when Russian forces captured key positions early in the invasion, they struggled to maintain control due to counterattacks from motivated Ukrainian defenders. 8. Mismanagement of troop morale. Russian commanders faced challenges in maintaining troop morale throughout the campaign due to various factors. High casualty rates. As casualties mounted during engagements with determined Ukrainian forces, morale among Russian troops began to decline. Lack of clear objectives. Confusion regarding operational goals contributed to frustration among soldiers who were unsure about their mission or its importance. 9. Failure to leverage local support. While Russia expected support from pro-Russian elements within Ukraine, this assumption proved misguided as local populations largely resisted occupation. Underestimating national identity. The Kremlin underestimated the strength of Ukrainian national identity and pride, which fueled resistance against foreign invaders, alienating local populations. Aggressive tactics employed by occupying forces alienated potential supporters within Ukraine, further solidifying opposition against the invasion. 10. Ignoring historical context. Russia's invasion failed to account for historical grievances and relationships between Ukraine and its neighbors. Historical tensions. The long-standing history between Russia and Ukraine shaped public sentiment. Many Ukrainians viewed the invasion as an existential threat rather than a liberation. Misguided perceptions of unity. The belief that Ukraine could be easily coerced into submission ignored decades of efforts toward independence and self-determination. Conclusion. The Battle of Kyiv serves as a stark reminder that military success is contingent upon sound strategy, effective logistics, accurate intelligence, and an understanding of local dynamics. The strategic mistakes made by Russian forces, ranging from underestimating Ukrainian resistance and logistical failures to inflexible tactics, ultimately contributed to their inability to capture Kyiv. As we reflect on these errors, it becomes clear that successful military operations require more than just overwhelming force. They demand adaptability, foresight, and an appreciation for the complexities inherent in modern warfare. The lessons learned from the Battle of Kyiv will undoubtedly shape future military strategies not only for Russia but also for nations around the world facing similar challenges in an increasingly volatile geopolitical landscape. The Battle of Kyiv, which took place from February 25 to April 2, 2022, marked a decisive moment in the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. As Russian forces advanced towards the Ukrainian capital with the intent to capture it swiftly, they encountered unexpected and fierce resistance from both the Ukrainian military and civilian population. A critical factor influencing the outcome of this battle was the extensive international support provided to Ukraine. This speech will explore how international assistance, encompassing military aid, humanitarian support, and diplomatic efforts, played a pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of the Battle of Kyiv and ultimately contributed to Ukraine's successful defense. The nature of international support. Military assistance. One of the most significant forms of international support was military assistance. From the onset of the invasion, countries around the world rallied to provide Ukraine with essential military equipment and training. Types of military aid. The aid included advanced weaponry such as anti-tank missiles, e.g., javelins, air defense systems, artillery, drones, and small arms. This equipment was crucial in enhancing Ukraine's defensive capabilities against a larger and better equipped Russian military. Training programs. In addition to supplying weapons, many countries initiated training programs for Ukrainian forces. This training focused on modern warfare tactics, equipment usage, and operational planning. Humanitarian support. International humanitarian assistance also played a vital role during the Battle of Kyiv, emergency relief, as fighting intensified. Millions of civilians were displaced or affected by the conflict. International organizations and governments provided food, medical supplies, shelter, and other essential services to those in need. Support for refugees. Neighboring countries opened their borders to Ukrainian refugees, providing them with safety and resources. This solidarity not only alleviated immediate suffering but also strengthened international resolve against Russian aggression. Diplomatic efforts. Diplomatic support from various nations and organizations helped bolster Ukraine's position on the global stage. Condemnation of aggression. The international community overwhelmingly condemned Russia's invasion through statements from governments and organizations like the United Nations and NATO. This condemnation helped isolate Russia diplomatically. Sanctions against Russia. Many countries imposed severe economic sanctions on Russia in response to its actions. These sanctions aim to cripple Russia's economy and diminish its ability to sustain military operations. Key contributions from major international actors. United States. The United States emerged as one of Ukraine's most significant allies during the Battle of Kyiv. Financial commitment. Since the beginning of the invasion, the U.S. committed nearly $40 billion in military assistance alone. This included advanced weaponry that proved crucial on the battlefield. Intelligence sharing. U.S. intelligence agencies provided critical information regarding Russian troop movements and strategies, enabling Ukrainian forces to plan effective counterattacks. European Union. The European Union, EU, also played a vital role in supporting Ukraine. Military aid initiatives. For the first time in its history, the EU approved lethal aid for a third country. The European Peace Facility allocated substantial funds for military assistance to Ukraine. Humanitarian response. The EU coordinated efforts to provide humanitarian aid to millions of displaced Ukrainians while also facilitating refugee support across member states. NATO. Although Ukraine is not a NATO member, the alliance demonstrated strong political support, coordination of aid. NATO facilitated coordination among member states regarding military assistance to Ukraine. This ensured that aid was delivered efficiently and met urgent needs on the battlefield. Training initiatives. NATO allies provided training for Ukrainian forces prior to the invasion, enhancing their readiness for combat. Numerous other countries contributed significantly to Ukraine's defense. United Kingdom. The UK pledged substantial military aid packages that included anti-tank weapons and artillery systems. Canada. Canada supplied various forms of military assistance while also hosting training programs for Ukrainian soldiers. Australia and New Zealand. Both nations provided humanitarian aid and military supplies as part of their commitment to supporting Ukraine. Impact of international support on the Battle of Kyiv. Enhanced military capability. The influx of international military aid significantly enhanced Ukraine's defensive capabilities during the Battle of Kyiv. Effective use of advanced weaponry. Ukrainian forces effectively utilized anti-tank missiles like javelins to target Russian armored units, inflicting heavy losses on invading forces. Improved air defense. The provision of air defense systems helped mitigate Russian air superiority, allowing Ukrainian forces to operate more freely without constant aerial bombardment. Boosted morale. International support had a profound impact on morale among Ukrainian troops and civilians. Symbolic solidarity. The visible commitment from global allies reinforced a sense of solidarity among Ukrainians. Knowing that they had international backing motivated both soldiers and civilians to continue resisting. Psychological warfare against Russia. The overwhelming international response served as a psychological blow to Russian forces, who expected a quick victory but instead faced an emboldened opponent. Strategic flexibility. International assistance provided strategic flexibility for Ukrainian forces, adaptation to battlefield conditions, with access to diverse weaponry and training. Ukrainian commanders could adapt their tactics based on real-time battlefield conditions. Resilience against supply disruptions. The ability to resupply quickly with international aid allowed Ukrainian forces to maintain pressure on Russian units despite logistical challenges. Diplomatic leverage. The diplomatic efforts undertaken by international actors provided Ukraine with leverage during negotiations, strengthened position at negotiation tables. The global condemnation of Russia's actions bolstered Ukraine's negotiating position in any future discussions regarding ceasefires or peace agreements. Long-term security guarantees. Ongoing diplomatic engagement resulted in discussions about long-term security guarantees for Ukraine beyond immediate military support. Challenges faced despite international support. While international assistance played a critical role in supporting Ukraine during the Battle of Kyiv, challenges remained. Logistical coordination. Despite efforts by various countries, logistical coordination posed challenges. Complex supply chains. Managing supply chains across multiple nations required significant coordination efforts that were sometimes hampered by bureaucratic hurdles. Timing issues. Delays in delivering crucial supplies could impact battlefield effectiveness. However, these challenges were often navigated successfully through collaboration among allies. Limitations on direct military engagement. While NATO provided substantial support indirectly through military aid, no direct troop deployment. NATO's Mutual Defense Clause prevented direct troop deployments into Ukraine, thus limiting certain types of military intervention that could have further bolstered defenses. Avoidance of escalation. Concerns about escalating tensions with Russia led many nations to refrain from certain forms of direct engagement that could have provoked retaliation. The Battle of Kyiv stands as a testament to how international support can decisively influence the outcome of conflict. Through military assistance, humanitarian aid, and diplomatic efforts, countries around the world rallied behind Ukraine during its darkest hours. This collective response not only enhanced Ukraine's defensive capabilities but also galvanized national morale and provided strategic flexibility against an aggressive adversary. As we reflect on these events, it is clear that solidarity among nations can play an essential role in upholding sovereignty and defending democratic values against tyranny. The lessons learned from this battle will resonate well beyond its conclusion, serving as a reminder that unity among nations can forge resilience in even the most challenging circumstances. In an era where global stability hangs by a thread, it is imperative that we continue fostering cooperation among nations committed to peace and security. The enduring spirit demonstrated by both Ukrainians and their international allies during this battle will inspire future generations as they navigate complex geopolitical landscapes fraught with challenges yet filled with opportunities for collaboration.